The auction room was dark, cold, and filled with noise. Bright lights flashed over shiny cages. Inside those cages stood alien girls, young, scared, and silent. They were not prisoners. They were not criminals. They were property. In this part of the galaxy, beauty was not respected. It was sold. And today was another auction night. Rich aliens sat on soft chairs, drinking colored liquids and laughing loudly. Every few minutes, a cage moved forward. The girl inside would be shown. Her name read, her price offered. And someone from the crowd would shout, "I'll rent her." She would be taken away for one night, then returned, used, broken. Again and again, one girl stood still in the last cage. Her skin was a soft silver blue. Her eyes were large, glowing, and full of sadness. She did not cry. She had stopped crying long ago. Her name was not known. Her number was Unit 341. She was different. She never begged, never screamed. That made people think she was boring. But she was simply empty. She's useless. One alien laughed. No fire in her. Maybe she's already broken, another one joked. The auctioneer tapped the cage. Last item for today, Unit 341. Rented 26 times. Never complained. Very quiet. Starting. Bid? Silence. Nobody raised a hand. The auctioneer sighed. Fine. Half price, anyone? Still no one moved. Then the door opened. Heavy boots echoed on the floor. A human man walked in. He was tall, quiet. His clothes were simple, almost dirty. A scar ran down his cheek. His eyes were sharp, cold. He didn't look rich. But he walked like someone who had seen war. The room went quiet. A human? Someone whispered, "What's he doing here?" The man looked at the cages, slowly, one by one. Then his eyes stopped on Unit 341. He pointed. Her? The auctioneer smiled nervously. Ah, yes. She's cheap today. Rent for one night? The man said, "No, I want to buy her." The room gasped. Buy her? One alien said, "She's not even worth that much. You can rent 5 girls for that price." The man didn't respond. He pulled out a black case and placed it on the table. Inside was a large stack of credits. Enough to buy a starship. "She's mine now," he said. The auctioneer blinked, then smiled. "As you wish, sir." The cage opened with a loud click. Unit 341 didn't move. She looked at the man, her face unreadable. "Come," he said. She followed. Inside his ship, everything was silent, clean. She expected chains. She expected dark rooms. Instead, he gave her a soft bed. Clean clothes. Food. She stood there, confused. "What do you want me to do?" she asked softly. The man looked at her. "Nothing." She blinked. "You paid for me." He nodded. "Yes." "Then, what do you want?" He paused, then said, "To give you a choice." "A choice?" She repeated, as if the word was strange. He didn't explain. He walked away and let her sleep. That night, she sat on the bed but didn't sleep. Her mind raced. What kind of owner gave food? Clothes? A bed? What kind of man said, "Do nothing"? Was this a game? A test? A trap? Next morning, she found a note beside the door. "You are not property. Not anymore. You are free to leave or stay." Jaren, her hands trembled. Freedom? She didn't believe it. For beings like her, freedom was a lie. People told before hurting you. Still, something inside her moved. Something very small. Something long forgotten. Hope. But she had one question now. Who was this human? Really? And why had he saved her? She sat in silence, staring at the door. The paper in her hand felt heavier than it should. Just a note 6. Words and a name. You are not property anymore. Her fingers touched the edge of the paper like it might disappear. She had heard many lies in her life, sweet words spoken by cruel mouths, but this man, Juran, had said almost nothing. No commands, no threats, no hands reaching out to hurt. Still, she did not believe him. She stood and walked slowly through the spaceship's hallway. It was clean, simple, but quiet, too quiet. There were no cameras watching her, no locks on the doors. She could run. She could escape. But where would she go? Out there was just space. And slavery. In the kitchen, he was making something. Steam rose from a pot. The smell was warm and strange, not bad, just new. He saw her and nodded once. "You're awake." She said nothing. He placed a bowl on the table. "Eat." She looked at the food. It wasn't dirty or leftover. It was made fresh. For her. "Is this a trick?" she asked quietly. He raised an eyebrow. "No, she didn't." "Move. I don't want to control you," he said. "I just don't want to leave you where I found you." Her eyes narrowed. "Why?" He sat across from her, leaning back in the chair. "Because I've seen things, done things, and I'm trying to live with them." She stared at him for a moment. He looked tired, but not weak. Like someone who had fought too long and finally wanted peace. She couldn't understand him. Men like him didn't exist. Not in her world. She picked up the spoon and tasted the food. Warm, soft, real. Her hands began to shake. He didn't look at her. He didn't smile. He didn't act like a hero. He just sat, sipping his drink. "Do you want me to work?" she asked, her voice flat. "No." "Clean? Serve you?" "No." "Sleep in your room?" He looked up. "Never ask that again." She froze. His voice was not angry, but strong, sharp. He meant it. "You're not here for that," he added. "You're not a tool." She looked down, ashamed. That was all she had ever been. He sighed. "What's your name?" "I don't have one." "You must have had one before they took you." She shook her head. "Not one I remember." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "You can choose a new one. Any name you want." She had never been asked that before. Not once. A name? For herself? She didn't answer. She COULDN single quotes T. Days passed. She stayed in the ship. Each day he gave her food, clothes, space, silence. She began to explore the ship's rooms. He didn't stop her. One day, she touched a photo on the wall. A picture of a small girl, human, smiling. "Who is she?" she asked. "My daughter." Jarn replied from behind. "She's not here?" He shook his head. "She died." A silence filled the room. "I'm sorry," she said, the words strange in her mouth. He nodded once. "Me too." That night, she sat alone and stared at the stars outside the window. She thought about the girl, about Jaren's scar, about the silence in his eyes. He had pain too, deep pain. Maybe that was why he had saved her. Maybe broken people could see each other. On the sixth day, she walked into the control room and asked, "Can I help fly the ship?" Jaren looked surprised. Then slowly he smiled. A small, honest smile. "Want to learn?" She nodded. He stood and pulled up a second chair. "All right," he said. "Let's start." She sat beside him. For the first time in years, she wasn't afraid of the man next to her. For the first time. She felt something different. Curiosity. Later that night, when she returned to her room, she looked in the mirror. The girl looking back still had silver blue skin and glowing eyes. But there was something new in those eyes. She whispered to herself, "I want a name." Then, softly, like tasting a sound, she said again, "I want a name." Outside in the hallway, Jaren paused. He had heard her. He smiled again. She wasn't just surviving now, she was becoming someone. She now had a name. It was a small word, chosen softly, just between her lips and her reflection. Nova. No one gave it to her. She created it out of silence, out of scars, out of something beginning to heal inside her. When she told Jaren, he didn't react with surprise. He just nodded like he already knew. "That's a good name," he said. "Strong?" Nova didn't know if she was strong yet, but hearing him say it made her believe she could be. The ship moved quietly through space, away from the outer markets, away from everything ugly. Nova woke each day in her own room, still surprised to be alive, still surprised no one had touched her without permission. Jaren didn't force her to stay hidden. He didn't treat her like something fragile. He gave her something more powerful than protection. He gave her time, time to breathe, time to ask questions, time to grow. One morning, Jaren handed her an old book, real paper, worn edges. She frowned. "What is this?" "A story," he said, "about people, real ones. It helped me when I forgot how to feel." Nova turned the pages slowly. She didn't understand every word, but the pictures between the lines were alive, people hugging, crying, laughing. "How can people feel so many things?" she asked. Jaren chuckled. "That's the hard part of being human. We feel everything, even when we don't want to." She didn't say it aloud, but she wanted to feel. She wanted to understand. Over time, Jaren began showing her more things. How to cook Earth food, how to fix wires, how to fly using star maps. He was patient, but never soft. "Wrong button," he'd say calmly when she made a mistake. "You're guessing," he'd add when she lied about understanding. But when she got something right, even something small, he'd nod with approval. Not a fake smile. Not loud praise. Just truth. And truth, Nova was learning, felt better than kindness. One night, she burned the soup. The ship filled with smoke. Alarms buzzed. She panicked. I'm sorry, I didn't mean." Jaren rushed in, turned off the stove, opened the vents. He didn't yell. He didn't sigh. He looked at her, wide-eyed and shaking, and said, "It's just soup." She stared at him. "No punishment?" He blinked. "For soup?" She sank to the floor. She hadn't cried in years, not even when she was sold, but now tears came without warning. Hot and angry. "I don't understand this world," she whispered. Jaren sat beside her. "Not too close. You don't need to understand it," he said. "Just live in it, one day at a time." She nodded, wiping her eyes. Something had cracked. And from that crack, something soft was growing. As the days passed, Nova began noticing things about Jaren. He had a habit of rubbing the scar on his face when he was thinking. He fixed broken tools but never replaced old ones. He carried an old locket in his pocket, a photo of his daughter and wife inside. She never asked what happened to them. He never offered to tell. But sometimes, when he thought she was asleep, he'd sit in the dark and talk to the stars. She listened from her room. "Am I doing the right thing?" he'd ask the sky. "She's not a project. She's a person. I just don't want to fail someone again." His voice was heavy. Nova didn't interrupt. But inside, something strange stirred. She wasn't just curious about Jaren anymore. She was starting to care. One afternoon, while learning to use the scanner, she turned to him suddenly and asked, "Why did you really buy me?" He didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, "Because I saw myself in your eyes." She tilted her head. "But I'm not human," he nodded. "Pain doesn't care what species you are." Nova looked away. "You could have bought anyone." "I didn't want anyone," he said quietly. "I wanted you." The words stayed with her all night. Simple, honest, not romantic. Just real. And real was more rare than any freedom. Later, when Nova looked at herself in the mirror again, she didn't see a slave. She didn't see a number. She saw a student, a traveler, a person. She was learning to live, to feel, to be, but out In the dark corners of the galaxy, not everyone was happy. Someone was watching. Someone who once rented her. Someone who didn't like that his property had disappeared. His ship was already tracking them. Nova didn't know it yet, but her new life was about to be tested. Because the past wasn't done with her, not yet. Nova was changing. She no longer walked like someone waiting to be told what to do. She stood taller now, asked questions, laughed sometimes just a little. She even smiled back when Jaren joked, though his jokes were dry and strange. But even as the ship floated peacefully through deep space, something inside her stayed restless. A shadow that didn't leave, no matter how much sunlight Jaren gave. Sometimes in her sleep, she would whisper words in a language Jaren didn't know. Sometimes she would wake up sweating, heart racing, eyes wide like she had seen something terrible. And sometimes she'd stare at her reflection too long, like trying to remember someone she used to be. One morning, while they were repairing the ship's rear scanner, Nova asked quietly, "Do you ever forget who you were?" Jaren didn't answer right away. He wiped oil off his hands and looked at the stars through the window. "I try," he said, "but the past doesn't forget me." Nova understood. Deeply. There were holes in her memory. Not just from trauma, but something else, something done to her. On the auction world, she was drugged, wiped, reprogrammed. But pieces still lived. Inside her. Bits of her old language, flashes of light, screams, and science. Strange knowledge. Sometimes when Jaren worked on the engine, Nova saw mistakes before he did. She knew how to solve complex equations she didn't remember learning. She once rewired an energy converter in half the time Jaren expected. "You? Sure you weren't an engineer in a past life?" He joked, but Nova wasn't laughing because she didn't think it was a joke. Late that night, she sneaked into the ship's medical bay. She had never explored it fully before. Jaren respected her privacy, so she respected his. But now, she needed answers. She activated the DNA scanner and placed her hand on the panel. It beeped once, then paused. Then again. Then the screen lit up with a flashing red message. Genetic anomaly detected. Class: bioweapon. Origin: unknown. Sector: Nova stared at the screen. Her hands turned cold. Bio-weapon. She ran the scan again. Same result. Suddenly, everything made sense and nothing did. Why she had no memories. Why she could understand systems, languages, even fighting instincts she never trained for. She wasn't just some alien girl. She was made. She shut the scanner down and returned to her room. Her thoughts spinning. In the mirror, she looked the same. But now she didn't feel real. What was she? Who made her? And why? The next morning she avoided Jaren. He noticed. "Something's wrong," he said. She kept her voice calm. "I didn't sleep well." But Jaren wasn't easy to fool. He watched her like someone watching a storm form quietly in the distance. 2 days later, Jaren received a message on a hidden comm channel. He opened it alone in the control room. Frowning at the encryption. Then he played the file. A distorted voice filled the air. "We know what you took. She was never yours. Return the asset or be hunted." Attached was a photo. Nova in her old cage. Jaren's jaw tightened. He knew this would happen eventually. But still, it hit like a punch. He walked to Nova's room, knocked once, and stepped in. She was sitting on the bed, holding the old book he gave her. "I know," she said before he even spoke. He stopped. "You know what? I ran a scan. On myself." He didn't look angry, just quiet. "And?" he asked. "I'm not just some alien girl," she whispered. "I think I was made, modified, engineered." Jaren stepped forward, sat beside her. "I saw a message," he said. "They want you back." Nova clenched her fists. "I'm not going back." You might not have a choice, he said honestly. She looked at him, eyes glowing faintly. Then you should leave me. Save yourself. But Jaren didn't move. I didn't buy a weapon, he said softly. I found a person. Her breath hitched. Whatever they made you for, he continued, doesn't define what you are now. Nova shook her head. You don't understand. What if I hurt someone? What if they can control me? Then we'll find a way to break that control. You'd risk your life for me? He looked into her eyes, unflinching. I already have. Outside the ship, a dark vessel appeared from hyperspace. Unmarked. Silent dotted scanners locked on dot inside it. Someone smiled. Asset located. Back inside, Nova and Jaren stood together in the control room. She had changed into a utility suit, no longer afraid to look like a fighter. What do we do now? She asked. We get answers, Jaren said. We find the lab that made you. We burn it down. Nova nodded slowly, and for the first time since leaving the cage, she smiled. Sharp, fierce smile. Not as a victim, but as someone ready to fight back. The silence before an attack was always the loudest. Nova stood beside Jaren in the ship's control room, watching the blinking red dot on the radar screen. It was getting closer, slowly, steadily, like a predator circling its prey. Who are they? She asked. Jaren's voice was flat. Private contractors. Hired hunters. Not military, but worse. Bounty hunters? Worse, he said again. Government-funded ghosts. Nova didn't need more explanation. They were coming for her, not because of what she had done, but because of what she was. Jaren moved fast. He sealed the ships. Systems, changed codes, locked flight paths. Nova helped. Her fingers moved across the controls faster than she expected. Like instinct. You've done this before, Jaren said, almost like a question. Nova shook her head. I don't remember. But your hands do. She nodded once, quietly terrified of what else her hands might remember. The enemy ship didn't. Fire right away. It hovered above, silent, watching, waiting. Then a message came through. A calm voice, male, almost polite. Surrender the asset. No one else has to die. Nova looked at Jaren. They mean me. He didn't answer. He just turned the comm off. Later, as they moved through the lower deck, preparing the escape routes, Jaren handed Nova a small weapon. She stared at it. A plasma blade. Light, fast, deadly. I'm not a soldier, she whispered. You don't have to be, he said. Just protect yourself, she nodded. But something inside her disagreed. When the enemy boarded, they didn't knock dot, they sliced the docking doors open with a heat cutter, entered in full black armor, and moved like shadows. Nova and Jaren split. Up dot smoke bombs filled the hallways. Lights flashed red. Nova moved through the vents, quiet as breath. Below her, she saw the hunters spreading out, searching, scanning. They weren't here to capture. They were here to erase. In the engineering room, one of the hunters found her. He raised his rifle too slow. Nova moved like lightning. She didn't think. She reacted. The plasma blade cut through the air, humming, and a second later the man collapsed. Groaning, she stared at him, shocked, her own hands trembling. I didn't mean to, she whispered, but deep inside, a voice whispered. Back? Yes, you did. You were made for this. She shook it off. No, I choose now. Meanwhile, Jaren was holding the upper hallway. He was a good shot. Not fast, but precise. Years of military training had not left his muscles. He took 2 down before they even saw him. But he was only one man. And Nova was only beginning to understand her strength. The ship groaned under pressure. Sparks flew. Alarms wailed. Nova found Jaren near the control room, bleeding from his shoulder. You're hit. Just a graze. He muttered, face pale. She helped him up, eyes scanning. More were coming. We can't hold them all, she said. Then we don't, Joran replied, pulling a device from his belt. We blow the corridor and run. You'll destroy part of the ship. We've got no choice. Nova paused, then nodded. Okay. Together, they set the charges. As they ran toward the escape pod, Nova looked back one last time. This ship had been her home, her first home. She clenched her jaw. They don't get to take everything. Joran activated the detonator. Boom. The walls behind them collapsed. Fire, smoke, falling steel. And then silence. Inside the pod, as it launched into space, Nova held Joran's arm, putting pressure on the wound. He winced but smiled weakly. Not bad for a lab experiment, he said. Nova looked at him. I'm not an experiment anymore. He nodded. No, you're trouble, she smiled faintly. Maybe I always was. The pod floated far into space. Cloaked, hidden. Behind them, the wreckage of the ship burned. But in front of them, new stars opened up. In a quiet moment, Nova asked, Why are they so afraid of me? Joran didn't speak right away. Then he said, Because you weren't made to obey. You were made to fight. And they're scared I might remember how. He looked at her. Do you? She turned to the stars, her eyes glowing faintly. Not yet, she whispered. But I will. Far away, on a planet hidden behind layers of government control, a man in a suit watched the destruction of Joran's ship on screen. He leaned back in his chair. Asset 341 has evolved, he said to his assistant. We underestimated. Her, the assistant asked, Do we initiate phase 2? The man smiled coldly. Yes, and make sure the public never hears her name. Back in space, Nova stared at her reflection in the pod window. She wasn't the same girl who came out of that cage. She wasn't even the same girl Joran bought. She was something else now. Not a weapon, not a slave, and not alone. The escape pod drifted through a silent part of the galaxy, hidden between dust clouds and forgotten stars. Inside, Joran lay resting, his shoulder wrapped in bandages. His breathing was shallow, but steady. Nova sat beside him, watching, protecting. She hadn't left his side in 2 days. Her hands, once unsure, now moved with quiet purpose. She checked the systems, scanned for threats, and mapped out supply stations and hidden sectors. She was learning to survive, not just for herself, but for him. Joran had given her freedom. Now, she would give him a future. When he woke, his voice was rough. Still here? Nova looked down at him. You thought I'd leave? He gave a tired smile. Would have made sense. Nova's eyes narrowed. I don't run anymore. He reached out weakly and touched her hand. You've changed, she nodded. Because you let me. They floated for several more days, repairing what little they could. Food was low. Weapons fewer. But Nova's mind was restless, focused. She wasn't waiting to be hunted again. She wanted to strike first. Where's the place they made me? She asked one night. Joran was sitting up now, better, but still healing. He looked at her carefully. Why do you want to go back? Nova's voice was sharp. Because they think I'm still theirs. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he opened an old file from his personal system. Coordinates flashed across the screen. Classified sector. Hidden lab. Codename, Black Echo, he said. This is where they built weapons like you. Nova stared at the screen. So we destroy it, she said. Joran blinked. That's a suicide mission. She turned to him, eyes glowing faintly. Not if we find others like me. The idea was wild, dangerous, impossible. But Joran didn't laugh because deep inside, he knew she was right. You couldn't outrun monsters forever. At some point, you had to face them. They landed on a dusty planet called Vexstar 4, a place known for old tech traders and off-grid smugglers. If there were people who had seen others like Nova people made, not born, it would be here. Nova walked through the market. Streets like she belonged. Gone was the frightened girl in a cage. In her place was someone unafraid to make eye contact, to speak clearly, to lead. And people noticed, especially a woman with cybernetic arms, who followed her from a distance. Nova caught her reflection in a window. She's tailing us, she whispered to Jaron. I see her, he replied. Want to run? No, Nova said. Let her come. The woman approached them in a back alley. You're not from here, she said, voice metallic. You looking for someone or something? Nova replied calmly, I'm looking for people who were built. Like me. The woman raised an eyebrow. Dangerous question. I'm dangerous, Nova said. The woman smiled. Then we should talk. Her name was Rill, ex-security, part machine, part organic. She knew of others genetically designed, mentally modified, living in shadows. Most of them hide, she explained. They don't trust anyone, especially not humans. Nova looked at Jaron. Then we show them they're not alone. Rill tilted her head. You're not just running anymore, are you? No, Nova said. I'm starting a war. Over. The next 2 weeks, they traveled across 3 moons and 1 asteroid base. Nova sent encrypted messages to underground networks. She spoke in secret rooms, shared her story, showed them her scars not to gain pity, but to offer truth. Some turned away, but a few listened. A few joined. By the end of the 2nd month, Nova had 10 people each with their own past, their own anger, their own reasons to fight. They weren't soldiers. They were survivors. And together, they were dangerous. Jaron trained them, taught them how to fight, how to fly, how to stay alive. He moved slower now, still healing, but his mind was sharp. Focused. Sometimes he looked at Nova from across the training room. She was fierce, confident, commanding. He no longer saw the girl from the auction. He saw a leader, and maybe more. One night, after a long mission, Nova sat beside him under the stars. We might die, she said softly. We probably will, Jaron replied. She turned to him. You could still walk away. You've done enough. He looked at her, long and quiet. I stayed because I believed in you, he said. But now I stay because I care. Nova's breath caught. I don't know what love is, she whispered. Jaron smiled faintly. Then we'll learn together. In the shadows of deep space, ships began to move. The system was watching, preparing, worried, because something was happening they never expected. One of their weapons had found her voice, and she was teaching others to speak. The war hadn't started yet, but the first spark had been lit. And her name was Nova. They came at dawn. 5 government ships, heavy cruisers. Fully armed. Nova stood at the edge of the cliff, wind brushing against her face, watching the sky catch fire. Behind her was a small rebel base, hidden beneath the rocks of a dead moon. Inside it, survivors waited, some scared, some brave, but all ready. They had trained for this, but Nova knew no amount of training prepares you for the moment. You stop running and start fighting. She looked over her shoulder. Jaron stood there, armored and quiet, a scar on his cheek and more in his heart. He met her eyes and gave a nod. She returned it without fear. Today was the end of something, or the beginning. The first shots came fast. Missiles streaked through the air. Sirens screamed. The base shook. Dust filled the sky. Nova moved through chaos like it was calm. She gave orders. Positioned fighters. Activated the pulse shields. She was no longer a student. She was a commander. Jaron fought beside her, shoulder heeled, eyes focused. He didn't lead this time. He followed her. An enemy transport landed near the southern ridge. Soldiers poured out. Black armor. red visors. Silent. Nova walked straight toward them, blade in hand. Without blinking. One of the soldiers stepped forward. Asset 341, he said through his helmet. You are property of the Directorate. You will surrender immediately. Nova smiled coldly. I have a name now, she said. The soldier raised his weapon. She moved first. The fight was fast, brutal. Nova's blade danced through metal and muscle. Her instincts were sharper than any programming. Around her, her people fought back with fire and fury. They weren't perfect. Some fell. But they didn't break because they were free. Because they had her. In the control room of the enemy flagship, a man in a suit watched the battle unfold. Calm, cold. She's not supposed to lead, he muttered. She was designed to follow. Another officer whispered, she's rewriting her code. He turned away from the screen. Then we erase her completely. He pressed a red button. And activated failsafe protocol 341. Nova froze mid-fight. Something was wrong. Her vision blurred. Her chest tightened. A voice echoed inside her head, mechanical, controlling. Return. Obey. Shut down. She fell to her knees. Filled her skull. Duran saw her drop and ran to her side, shouting her name. Nova, stay with me. She clutched her head, teeth clenched, eyes wild. I can't fight it. Duran pulled her close. Listen to me. You're not a weapon anymore. You're not theirs. Tears streamed down her face. I don't know who I am. Yes, you do, he said. You chose your name. You chose your path. You chose me. She opened her eyes, struggling, trembling. Fight it, Nova. Not for me, for you. Inside her mind, a storm raged. Old commands, triggers, fear. But through it, another voice rose. Her own. I am not property. The words lit like fire inside her. I am not a tool. The storm cracked. I am not theirs. And finally, I am Nova. Her eyes snapped open, burning bright. The control was gone. She stood up slowly, stronger than before. The enemy soldiers backed away. Fall back. Someone shouted, but it was too late. Nova raised her hand, and for the first time she controlled. The energy that once belonged to her creators. It surged from her body. Pure and wild. She wasn't just free. She was reborn. Within minutes, the tide of battle changed. Enemy systems crashed. Their ships lost control. The rebels pushed forward. And Nova? She walked into the flames like a force of nature. The flagship tried to escape, but Nova was faster. She entered the bridge alone, blade drawn. The man in the suit turned, eyes wide. You're not supposed to be this powerful. She stepped closer. No, you just never expected me to stop being afraid. He tried to reach for a weapon. She didn't give him the chance. When it was over, the moon was quiet again. Wreckage smoldered in the distance. The rebel base stood battered but alive. Nova walked through the rubble. Her people greeted her with nods, salutes, and quiet respect. She had led them through the storm. Not as a symbol, not as a soldier, but as a person. Later, Duran found her sitting on the same cliff where it all began. She looked different now, older somehow, not in age, but in soul. It's over, he said. She nodded slowly. No, it's just beginning. He sat beside her. What now? She looked at the stars. We find others like me. We give them names. We give them voices. He smiled. You think they'll follow you? She shook her head. They don't have to. I just want them to know one thing. What's that? Nova stood up, looking powerful and peaceful all at once, that they were never property to begin with. And with that, she walked forward. Not into darkness, but into the light of her own story. Free. Whole. And finally, truly alive.